there is a new berry strength calculator on the scene, and it's very simple to use, very beautiful. I think a lot of you are going to love this, but it is nowhere near as comprehensive as the Rainonix calculator. Things that it doesn't account for energy, it doesn't account for ingredient, it doesn't account for any of the skill triggers. Rainonix accounts for some of the skill triggers, but not all of them. Where this calculator shines is that it purely looks at whether your Pokemon provides strong berry strength. And that would include, well, the type of berry that a berry is. So for example, ice type berry are stronger than electric berries. It accounts for the level of the Pokemon, so higher level Pokemon provide better strength per berry. It looks at the speed of the Pokemon. Faster speed means more berries, means more berry strength. It also incorporates favorite berries for certain areas. So in this video, I'm going to show you guys an example from my own experience how this calculator is actually quite helpful without diving into the complexity of the Rainonix calculator, but also how you should understand this calculator, because as usual, it's important that you know how a tool works rather than just use it and not understand the numbers. And I'm going to help you guys through this one. I'm going to use myself as an example. This was my Tyranitar this morning. That is a lot of beans and ginger when I woke up in the morning. And my ingredient bag was already full, and in fact it was full for some time already. And you can tell I'm not optimizing the game at all if my bag is stuck at 600 out of 600 like this. Where in fact I should be using a berry specialist instead of an ingredient specialist that farms these beans and gingers that I don't need. Currently it's the Valentine's week, so these ingredients are almost useless. There's not a lot of things I can cook with them. I mean, maybe I can use it for Steadfast Ginger Cookie because of gingers, but the problem is it then takes away some of the eggs and cacao I need for the macaron dish. I could cook huge power soy donuts, but then it's not like the highest base strength recipe either. So largely, Tyranitar is a fairly useless ingredient specialist for this week. But I am at Snowdrop Tundra, so I do get some value in double the berry strength from Tyranitar. In fact, here are Berrytar's stats. I've got Berry Finding S, which means I'm getting 2 times of the 2 times berry in strength this week. So should I keep him on the team? What are my alternatives? Why don't we take a look? So at this moment, this is my team. With Blastoise, it's the one that swaps out with Tyranitar depending on what I need at that moment. Blastoise gives me the cacao that I need and also milk for this dessert week. Whereas Tyranitar gives me that Berry Finding S double favorite berry strength, which Blastoise doesn't. But is there an even better option? Let's assume that my bag is full and I don't need any more ingredients and I can cater for all the recipes upcoming because I've farmed with Blastoise for some time now and I've got all the cacao that I need. Should I go to Tyranitar to farm the BFS dark berries, or should I go for something like this guy who's been with me for a long time, with Toilet having Berry Finding S, and it's level 50, and the fact that it's got huge speed stats. Now for this discussion, we're going to ignore main skills. Would a high level Feraligatr who doesn't have favorite berry be worth more than my BFS Tyranitar? Better yet, why don't we compare to whether I should invest in a new Pokemon that I haven't invested in yet. So for example, this Naptatar here, who has, again, Berry Finding S at level 10 and it has Helping Speed at level 25. How far do I need to invest this Rattata in order for it to match my Tyranitar's strength and also being able to farm some ingredients that I actually need for this week? So this is where the new calculator shines. So this calculator here is called team.blspnm.com. You might recognize this domain because it's the same guy that made the candy calculator that you've probably seen before. And if you've liked the candy calculator, you're gonna love this one even more. So how this one actually works is if you want to add a Pokemon for comparison, you press the little plus button down here at the bottom, and then you select the Pokemon that you want to add. So let's say, hopefully the Berry Specialist, because really that's what we're comparing. But let's say I want to add the Tyranitar, which kind of serves like a Berry Specialist anyway, because it has Berry Finding S. So it has Berry Finding S, it's level 43. And then you put in the nature. So I've already done that. So I'm just going to cancel that. This is my Tyranitar that you saw before. Now, what's important to note here is that this strength is purely that berry strength, and it ignores any ingredients that this Pokemon might farm. So of course, Tyranitar, being an ingredient specialist, focuses on ingredient strength, which this calculator doesn't provide for. So what we're assuming here is that you've already got your ingredients sorted. For example, like for me, my bag is maxed. My pots are being maxed out every time. I don't even need beans or ginger. I just want to know whether this Tyranitar with Berry Finding S and Favorite Berry is better to use than my Feraligatr, or even investing in Eradicate, based purely on berry strength. Not to mention that the skill of Tyranitar for me is kind of useless because I run an Energy for Everyone healer. So Tyranitar, when it triggers the skill, it just goes to 150%. It's rather useless to me because it just caps out at 150% anyway. So for me, even though Tyranitar has Berry Finding S, it's largely useless this week. Let's take a look at how it compares to Feraligatr in berry strength. This is a real Feraligatr. It is my Feraligatr that has Helping Speed M, S, and Berry Finding S in its first 3 subskills. It is at level 50, and this is its berry strength. Now, these numbers shouldn't be read on their own. They should really just be used to compare and see which one's better. And the reason is, these numbers consider that your Pokemon are at 0% energy. It's just how the developer of this app decided to make it, as opposed to using the 2.22 times multiplier at 100%. It also doesn't account for any depletion of energy throughout the day, as you can see, unlike the Rainanex calculator, which has the settings where you can input your sleeping patterns and how often you expect your energy to fall below a certain point. It doesn't look at any of that. It just considers everyone at base level so that you can just compare purely on berry strength without worrying about other factors. And in this case, my Feraligatr at level 50 is actually better than Tyranitar. And that includes the fact that Tyranitar is Favorite Berry, because you can actually select the area down here. If you click the button down here, you can click Cyan Beach, in which case Feraligatr would, overshoot in its power. You can select Snowdrop Tundra, and yet Tyranitar doesn't beat Feraligatr. And Feraligatr has a more useful skill on my teams because I run an Energy for Everyone healer. Now, these numbers are based purely on the fact that these Pokemon will not farm a single ingredient, so sneaky snacking the whole time. You can actually adjust in the menu setting up here and either turn that on and off whether you want sneaky snacking or not. If you don't run sneaky snacking, you'll see that all the numbers drop because everyone has a chance to farm ingredient, which is worth 0 in this calculator. Having said that, it does account for Ingredient Finder Up. For example, my Tyranitar has Ingredient Finder Up. Under normal situations, that would be really good if I need its beans and ginger, but I don't. I just need berries at this stage. So you'll find that if I remove the Ingredient Finder, so right now it's at 358 strength per hour, and yes, I should mention that this is per hour, the strength. And if I remove that, it's at 372 strength. So the Tyranitar gets better based on purely berry strength when Ingredient Finder Up is not there. If I leave the Tyranitar with maximum carry limit, so in other words, had I left the Tyranitar like this because I simply don't have any bag space and it was just sneaky snacking the whole time, farming that 2 berries, I can just go to the menu and turn on sneaky snacking to then compare the strengths of the berries. So even ignoring any ingredient finding, the Tyranitar falls behind Feraligatr. Heck, I even compared my Tyranitar with Berry Finding to Piggy's free-to-play BFS Raichu. In fact, this was her first ever buddy. This is her first Pokemon, the Raichu, that she got as a free-to-play. She didn't re-roll her account or anything like that. At the time, we didn't know how broken this Raichu is. She has Helping Speed and Berry Finding and Ingredient Finding down on her Raichu. In fact, this Raichu is so strong, it also beats my Tyranitar. So in other words, yes, it's actually worth me switching Tyranitar out for Feraligatr for more overall strength. In fact, there is no sense in keeping that Tyranitar on the team. But let's take one more example that we talked about, Raticate. So I have a Berry Finding S Rattata, which I wasn't sure if I should invest for Snowdrop Tundra. I mean, it's good, but it's not perfect. It does have Apple that I need this week, but then it's got Beans at level 30, which I don't need this week. This one has Berry Finding S and Helping Speed, and then a Neutral Nature. So let's input these stats in the new calculator. And of course, I'm going to assume that I can evolve it to Raticate, which isn't too hard for Rattata. And I'm just testing out my resources, and I can make this Rattata up to level 40 if I really wanted to push it. So here are the stats inputted. I'm going to assume that I get it up to level 34 first because I want to show you that at level 34, even with BFS, this Raticate doesn't quite beat Tyranitar in Berry Strength. And this is with Sneaky Snacking on. I can turn it off and compare again, and now Raticate beats Tyranitar. So in fact, under most circumstances where I am collecting all the ingredients, the Raticate starts becoming better than the Tyranitar from level 34. And it gets better still, because right now it still falls behind Feraligatr. But let's make it level 38 to see how far it can get. And now I can see that under non-sneaky snacking circumstances, this Raticate now overtakes the Feraligatr. So the main question I have to ask myself is whether that little bit of difference to invest it all the way to level 38, costing me tens of thousands of Dream Shards and all the Rattata candies, all for it to be just about the same as Feraligatr. Well, at this stage, the answer is no. But in fact, just to show you guys, it's still worse than the Raichu under non-sneaky snacking circumstances. So how far do I have to invest this? Let's say we take it up to level 50, which is the current cap. Then Rattata does make it pretty far up the list. If I can get it up to this level, then it would be quite worthwhile for me to switch from Tyranitar to BFS Raticate. But actually not that much better than Feraligatr. And still nowhere near as good as my beast of a Pokemon, Walrein, which has Berry Finding S and Helping Bonus. So in actual fact, yes, I can swap out this Blastoise and not put Tyranitar, even though it's Snowdrop Tundra, for a Rattata or a Feraligatr, both of which would provide better strength overall than trying to force Tyranitar on this team. And while we're here, why don't we take two more examples? So I've got another berry specialist here, which is Houndoom, and these are its stats. And then I've got Snomlet over here, and these are its stats. It also has Berry Finding, which is great because Ice-type berries are great for Snowdrop Tundra, but how does it rank on my Pokemon box? So once again, we're going to come over here and input their stats. So looking for Houndoom, and I just love these graphics. So my Houndoom has Neutral Nature, Helping Bonus, and Helping Speed. It is level 38, so we're going to save that, and then we're going to add on Snomlet as well, who has Berry Finding S and Neutral Nature. Now, I have no plans to swap out Abomasnow, even if its berry strength isn't that good, because this calculator is only about berry strength. I actually need Abomasnow for its eggs. So let's add Abomasnow, and you can see that Abomasnow, even though it has BFS, because of its low level and low speed, and the fact that actually it's meant to focus on ingredient strength, it ranks right at the bottom of my list. However, what is interesting is that my Houndoom that doesn't have Berry Finding S actually ranks behind my Tyranitar. So this is where it gets interesting. Because my Tyranitar is 5 levels ahead, and they both have ×2 berry, and Tyranitar is a bit faster, it would actually be better from a berry strength perspective to swap in Tyranitar over my Houndoom. The difference though is that Houndoom actually has a Charge Strength S skill that I can use, whereas Tyranitar's self-healing is a little bit overboard when I'm already running a healer. So in actual fact, between the two, it might not be that different. And while we're here, why don't we put the entire team into that calculator to see how the rest of the team fares. Now I'm using Blastoise not because of the berry, but because of the ingredients that I need, both of which are good for macarons. And here are its stats. And Wigglytuff is mainly just for the healing, and these are its stats. And you can see that Blastoise ranks right at the bottom, so if you're not using its ingredients or you've already been able to max the pot without its ingredients, it would be totally useless. And these are the stats for my Wigglytuff, and even that ranks a bit higher than Blastoise, which was what I suspected because it has Berry Finding S. So you can see how powerful a high level Berry Specialist is in this game, even if it isn't favorite for the area. But of course, if it is also favorite for the area, it is absolutely broken. And I recommend that you guys play around with this calculator yourself. You're gonna love the graphics and have the simplicity of it because it doesn't really worry about anything else. Like, you don't need to put in the skill trigger, you just need to put in anything that's related to berry finding. There's only 6 skills in the sub-skills that relate to berry finding. And just remember, only selecting skills that you've unlocked for comparison, unless you're just doing simulations. If you want to look more into how this calculator came about, you can actually read it at the bottom here. If you click that, you'll see that it's really just using a very simple Excel or Google sheet to determine the berry strength of a Pokemon. And there is one more feature that you might like. It's called Get Best. And what that means is, amongst these skills, there's one that is shared amongst the team, and that is Helping Bonus. And it becomes quite tricky to do the maths because, well, do you take all 25% of the Helping Bonus that is shared amongst the team and add it all to the same Pokemon, or do you just take 5% and just ignore the rest? Well, in this calculator, it takes 5% and puts it into the strength. But what Get Best does is it allows you to also consider the fact that Helping Bonus boosts the entire team. So in this 9 Pokemon theoretical box that I have, currently you would think that I should use these 5 for berry strength, but it doesn't fully account for Helping Bonus. So what you can do is click Get Best, and you can see that Helping Bonus also gets counted for the entire team this time, and it gives you the top 5 teams that gives the most strength considering Helping Bonus. So in these cases, you can see that Helping Bonus is plus 10%. That's because both Walrein and Houndoom gets Helping Bonus, so it's total of 10% per team member, which is why the strengths here are higher than what's shown in my box. And they are indeed 10% higher than what was shown in the box. Basically, you can input all of your best Pokemon into this app, and it will just computate the best 5 for berry strength on your team for that research area. So while I think this is really neat to see, and the graphics are just amazing, you still need to consider the fact that there's still main skills to account for, and also what specific ingredients that you need to complete a recipe. So unfortunately, you won't see Wigglytuff on any of these teams because this calculator doesn't account for any main skill triggers like Energy for Everyone. If you wanted to know more about that, you would use Rainanix calculator, you wouldn't use this one. But what I do find most interesting about this calculator is that I can use it for 1v1 comparisons. So for example, like I showed before, Tyranitar and Feraligatr. I'll leave a link to this calculator in the description below. If you guys have any questions, you can direct them at me in the Discord or in the comments section below. Let me know whether you like this calculator or not, or if there's any improvements you want to make. I am in touch with the developer. And never forget that irrespective of which calculator you use, it's about whether you understand how to use it. Thank you for watching, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe.